Hello everyone and welcome to this presentation. I'm Nicolas Ladd and one of the authors of the paper leveraging Relational Concept Analysis for automated feature location in software product line. This work has been done by myself, Lemoine, Huchard and Serai from the University of Montpellier, France. Let us start by introducing the feature location problem. Feature location is the process of finding the artifact inside the software that made for the implementation of a specific software feature. The feature location is done with the knowledge of what are the features inside the software, but not where they are implemented. We can distinguish three types of feature location by static analysis, dynamic, or lexical analysis. Feature location is also applied in the context of a product family. A product family is a set of software variants that share the implementation of common features, but also have their own features implemented, which make them specific and different from the other products of the family. In this context, feature location technique can study the variability of the product family to their advantage. This is often done when migrating a product family into a software product line. To that regard, few works have relied on formal concept analysis, or FCA, to perform some part or the entire feature location process. FCA is a knowledge engineering method based on the lattice theory and is used in feature location from its clustering ability. Each cluster is a concept and is composed of a maximal set of objects, here the product, that share a maximal set of attributes, here either the artifact or the features. The idea being that the features and artifact can be clustered together inside one concept, based on the fact that they appear together inside the same product. Let us take the example of a general idea of this clustering aspect and see how FCA-based technique handle them. As for any feature location technique, the idea is to associate all artifacts to at least one feature. Thus, we want to find the trace between the feature and the artifact. We take here the example of a product family of printer machine. The variability and the cluster are here represented by two Venn diagrams, one on the left for the product features and one on the right for the product artifact. Thus, the general principle is to rely on the variability to cluster features and artifacts, as we can see here with the features picture and the group of artifact 2 are linked together. We can do the same for most of the artifact group and link them to their proper features. However, some group can be left without matching features, as we see here with the group GA6. In the existing FCA-based technique, the general assumption on how to handle such a case is to find a feature to match GA6 based on the features that are present in the product in which GA6 appear. So if you want to reproduce P3 from the selection of its initial features, here color, base, or scanner, we will have to associate G6 to either the three feature color, base, or scanner. Thus, for instance, we can decide to trace GA6 to scanner, which will now have for implementation J5 and J6. However, by doing so, we actively modify the initial implementation of any product that were implemented scanner, such as P13. Now reproducing P13 by selecting scanner will thus force JA6 into its implementation, which hasn't been its initial implementation in the first place. Another hypothesis is to consider that JA6 is the implementation of a feature interaction. This hypothesis is also shared by some works, such as the one of Fisher and al. Therefore, to conduct the feature location, we have to consider the feature and their interaction, whom are not explicitly declared in the first place. Thus, our goal in this work is to complete the feature location with FCA-based technique to extract the trace of the feature interaction and of the regular feature trace that we call here the feature core. To do so, we have designed a feature location process that has for input two formal concepts, one for the feature inside each product and one from the artifact inside of each product. Both contexts have to be given ahead of the process. For the initialization, the idea is to use FCA to build the concept, which are the gathering of products that share the same features or the same artifacts. Thus, there will be two kinds of concepts, one for the features and one for the artifacts. Then we use FCA to produce a structure called the AOCEPO set, which is a partial of the order of this concept that introduce either products or their shared attributes. This means that there is no empty concept inside of an AOCEPO set. Here we see the obtained AOCEPO set for the features and the artifacts. And next, we use RCA to link together the concepts from the artifact AOCEPO set and the feature AOCEPO sets. So as we see, inside the relational AOCEPO set, our interest is driven towards the concept that introduce attributes, which are here highlighting in red and green. All the other concepts, while being not empty, only refer to concepts inside the previous AOCEPO set that are not introducing either a feature of or artifact inside the respective AOCEPO sets. We differentiate the concept in green, which mention only artifact, from the concept in red that mention artifact and features. The red concept represents what we call the core implementation of a feature, since it links feature directly to a set of artifacts. For instance, artifact 27 is the core implementation of the feature scanner. Thus, removing the artifact 27 will remove the feature scanner from the product. For the concept in green, only mentioning artifacts, that represent the implementation of a feature interaction that is yet to be determined. So at this point, the core features are found, but not their interaction. To build the interaction trace, we introduce the notion of apparition context. An apparition context gives all the cases in terms of features of when an artifact group appears inside a product. It can be composed either of positive or negative feature. First, we extract the positive feature of an apparition context. These are the features mentioned to be inside the product when a group of artifacts is also present inside. To obtain them, we look at all the products where the artifacts have appeared, and we collect the feature mentioned inside all of these products. So here, we see that these artifacts have appeared when the feature of P4 are selected, or the feature of P1, or the feature of P5, etc. Then we look if there is any negative feature part of the apparition context. This corresponds of finding which features are never present in an apparition context for this group of artifacts. To do so, we search if there is any mutual exclusion between the concept introducer of this targeted artifact and any other concept that indicates the core implementation of a feature, so the red concept of earlier. In this example, we found that color is never present in the products when artifacts 8, 10, 11, and 12 actually are inside. And from this point, we obtain the minimal set of traces that can be extracted from our product family. We now propose to transform these traces into logical formula for better comprehension. As we see here, the formula can be quite long and thus difficult to understand. We found that most of the terms in this formula are redundant and thus the formula itself can be simplified. The simplification is done inside a trace reduction phase. Here we reduce the formula in 4 steps. First, by applying the simplification from the Boolean algebra. Second, by removing the common feature since it is redundant to have it in all formula. This information is given by the AOCEPO sets and is extracted directly inside a variability model. We refer to the process in how to make this variability model in more detail in our paper. Thirdly, we factorize the formula to reduce them further, and we use again the information from the variability model in the right side of the picture to remove the implied feature, which are the features that are redundant because if we look inside the variability model, they are already implied by other features from the formula. In our experimentation, we want to look at the validity of our extraction trace process by conducting an experiment. Our experiment focuses on the validity of the trace extracted. Our idea is that if the trace can be used to reproduce the original set of artifacts in each product, then it will mean that we have correctly located the feature implementation. In fact, it will mean that it will mean that we are able to select the correct group of artifacts when a specific feature is selected. Moreover, it should include the feature interaction implementation of the original product. Each trace logical formula can be interpreted using the feature mentioned by the original product. We run this extraction and comparison over a case of 5 case study found in the literature. Each product has different configuration that we have included in our result folder. We have obtained a 100% match between the set of artifacts from the original product and the one obtained after having interpreted the extracted trace. This means that our trace can be used to correctly select the proper artifact whenever a particular feature is selected, and that the feature interactions are also correctly interpreted and included. Concerning the trace reduction, we observe that our technique have, in average, reduced by 67% the trace length in our case study. As for the threat of validity in our technique, we should mention that this does not reconstruct the original product, but only its original set of artifacts. The case study comes from Java project only and were limited by their number and size as they did not have a lot of features. Finally, because of the lack of standardized method to evaluate the general feature location technique, we have yet to compare our result to other work. Our technique is also limited by the necessity of constructing the formal concept in first hand. However, it can be automated as we show in previous work. But our technique cannot distinguish co-occurring features, nor that it can distinguish abstract features from concrete one. For the related work, there is a large diversity of feature location technique. Thus, our related work has focused on feature location for automated technique in the context of a product family. For the techniques found that use FCA, none of them were able to precisely locate the feature implementation since they ignore the feature interaction phenomenon and are designed to work at a granularity that only considers the entire method and not the method statement as individual artifacts. For the technique that work without FCA, we look at ECHO, which shares similarity with our work. To summarize, ECHO can be used to retrieve the original set of artifacts so it has a precise location, and it also applies it at a fine granularity. However, there are differences, since ECHO is designed to work on source code artifact only, and when used to migrate product toward SPL, ECHO depends on source code structure dependency to build the equivalent of a viability model. Whereas our technique relies on the AOCEPO set to extract its variability model, which has been shown to be closer to a true feature model. In conclusion, we present in our work an automated process to extract the feature and the feature interaction in the context of a static analysis for a product family. Our technique relies on FCA and RCA to build the relational AOCEPO set from which we base our 4 algorithms to extract the trace that we present in our paper. Then we propose to reduce the length of these traces by applying a 4 steps simplification and to turn them into logical formula for better understanding. We demonstrate the capability of our technique over 5 case studies and shows that the traces were sufficient to retrieve the original product artifacts. As for future work, we will focus on making an empirical comparison with the existing work over a benchmark like ArgoML. We will also employ our technique to build the annotation of an SPL platform and see how the nested annotation can be used to further reduce the trace that we extract. Thank you for listening.